Most people see the American robin hopping across their lawn every single morning, yet almost nobody notices the incredible secret hidden right on its chest. You probably think you know exactly why this bird has that bright, iconic red breast. You might think it is just to look pretty, or maybe to stand out in the spring sunshine. But what if I told you that the red on a robin's chest is not just a simple color? It is actually a glowing billboard that tells other birds exactly how healthy they are, how good they are at finding food, and even whether they will survive the freezing winter. And here's the really wild part. The color is not even created by the bird itself. The robin does not produce this red pigment at all. It has to steal it, one berry at a time. But here is the surprising part. Even when they eat all the right berries, some robins still end up with dull, faded chests. Why does that happen? And what happens when a baby robin is born without any red at all? Stick around, because the story of the robin's red breast is actually a hidden tale of survival, secret ultraviolet light, and a massive historical mistake that changed how we see this bird forever. Let us start with what you are actually looking at when you see a robin in your backyard. Picture that classic scene. The morning dew is still on the grass, and a plump little bird pulls an earthworm out of the soil. You look at its chest and think, wow, that is a bright fire engine red. But if you were to look at that same feather under a microscope, or even just hold it up in really bright, direct sunlight, you would notice something pretty amazing. It is not actually bright red. It is a deep, rusty, warm orange red. So why do we all call it red? Well, human eyes are pretty easily tricked, especially when a color is surrounded by the dark, slate-gray back and the stark white lower belly of the bird. The contrast makes that warm orange pop right out at us as red, but the real magic is not in how we see it. It is in how the bird gets it in the first place. Unlike some birds that get their color from the physical structure of their feathers, like the brilliant blue of a blue jay, the robin's red comes entirely from its diet. This is where things get really interesting. The robin has to eat specific wild fruits and berries to get this color. These berries contain something called carotenoids. Think of carotenoids as nature's paint. When a robin eats berries like hackberries, juniper, dogwood, or even wild cherries, its digestive system breaks down the fruit and extracts these colorful compounds. Then, as the bird grows new feathers, it deposits these pigments right into the feather structure. That means the robin is literally wearing its diet on its chest. If a robin has a terrible year and cannot find enough of the right berries, its red breast will actually grow in pale, dull, and faded. Pretty wild, right? The color of a robin's chest is basically a direct receipt of what it ate over the last few months. You can actually tell how well a robin has been eating just by glancing at its chest from your kitchen window. But hold on, because this gets even more fascinating. You might be wondering, why would a bird want to broadcast what it ate? Why not just be a neutral, muddy color so predators do not notice it? Well, believe it or not, that dull or bright red is actually a matter of life and death, especially when it comes to finding a mate. Here is where things get really interesting. In the robin world, the red breast is a billboard for health. When spring arrives and the robins are back in your neighborhood, the males are looking for the best possible partners to help raise their babies. Raising baby birds is exhausting work. They have to catch thousands of insects, defend the nest from snakes and neighborhood cats, and keep the babies warm through chilly spring rains. A male with a deep, rich, vibrant red breast is sending a very specific message to the females. He is saying, look at me, I am so healthy, and I am so good at finding food, that I had plenty of extra time and energy to eat the exact right berries to get this perfect color. It is an honest signal. A sick bird or a bird that is struggling to survive simply cannot fake a bright red chest. The females know this, and they almost always choose the reddest males. But what happens next surprises many birdwatchers. The red breast is not just for the ladies. It is also a warning sign to other males. When two male robins meet in a territory dispute, they do not always start fighting right away. First, they flash their red breasts. They puff out their chests to show off as much red as possible. It is a game of chicken. The male with the duller chest will usually back down and fly away because he knows he is outmatched by the healthier, redder rival. This saves both birds from getting injured in a physical fight. So that red patch is actually a peacekeeping tool, just as much as it is a mating tool. It keeps the neighborhood peaceful without anyone having to throw a punch. Now you might think we have figured out the whole red breast mystery. We know it comes from berries, and we know it is used for mating and territory. But most people completely miss this next part, and it completely changes how we understand the robin. What we see as a nice warm orange red is actually just a fraction of the story. Human eyes can only see a small slice of the light spectrum. We miss a whole world of ultraviolet light. But birds can see ultraviolet light, And here is the shocking observation. To another bird, the robin's red breast actually glows. The pigments in those feathers do not just reflect the red light that we see. They also reflect ultraviolet light. So when a female robin is looking at a male, she is not just seeing a red chest. She's seeing a chest that is practically shining with a bright, invisible ultraviolet aura that we are completely blind to. This ultraviolet reflection is tied to the exact same health signals we talked about. A healthier bird does not just have a redder chest to us. It has a brighter, more intense ultraviolet glow to other birds. This means that when you are watching robins in your backyard, you are only seeing half the conversation. They are having a secret, glowing light show right in front of you, and you have no idea. That is actually kind of genius when you think about it. Nature created a secret communication channel that predators like cats, snakes, and even humans cannot see. The robins are basically whispering to each other in a language of light. So the adults have these amazing, glowing, diet-derived red breasts. But what happens when a new robin is born? If you look into a robin's nest in late spring, you are going to see a huge surprise. The babies do not have red breasts. In fact, they do not look anything like their parents. Baby robins are covered in fluffy, spotted brown and gray feathers. They look like little speckled thrushes. Why would they not have the red breast right from the start? Well, it all comes down to survival. A bright red breast is great for an adult who needs to attract a mate and defend a territory. But for a baby bird sitting in an open cup nest, a bright red chest would be a disaster. It would light up like a beacon for every hawk, cat, and snake in the neighborhood. So nature gives the babies a dull, speckled coat that blends in perfectly with the shadows and dappled sunlight of the leaves. It is perfect camouflage. But here is the surprising part. As the baby robin grows and gets ready to leave the nest, it goes through its first molt. It sheds those baby feathers and grows in its adult plumage, but it still does not get the red breast right away. The young robins, both male and female, actually grow in breasts that are a pale, washed-out orange, heavily mixed with brown and white spots. They look like faded, messy versions of the adults. Why? Because they are teenagers. They have not had the time or the experience to build up the fat reserves and health needed to process all those carotenoid-rich berries. Their first winter is the hardest test of their lives. They have to learn how to find food, avoid predators, and survive the freezing cold. Only the strongest, smartest young robins make it through that first winter. When spring comes around again, the surviving males will finally molt into their full, vibrant, glowing red breasts. The red breast is literally a badge of survival. It proves that the bird has made it through the brutal realities of nature. Now, before we go any further, we need to clear up one of the biggest myths in the entire backyard birding world. You have definitely seen this. You are watching a robin on the lawn. It tilts its head, listens to the dirt, and yanks out a big, wiggly earthworm. Because the bird is eating this dark, earthy creature, a lot of folks naturally assume that the earthworm is what gives the robin its red breast. But here is the surprising part. Earthworms have absolutely nothing to do with the red color. Zero. Earthworms are pure protein and fat. They are the robin's equivalent of a high-energy steak, giving the bird the muscle and energy it needs to fly, forage, and survive. But they contain no carotenoids. If a robin only ate earthworms for its entire life, its breast would actually grow in completely gray and white. It is strictly the berries that paint the chest. The worms build the engine, but the berries provide the paint. And speaking of paint, you might be wondering what happens when that paint job starts to chip. If you watch the robins in your yard closely in late July or August, you are going to see something that completely ruins the illusion. The beautiful, vibrant red breast just vanishes. The bird looks patchy, dull, and honestly, a little bit scruffy. What happens next surprises many birdwatchers because it looks like the bird is sick. But it is actually just going through its late summer molt. Growing new feathers takes a massive amount of energy and nutrients. By late summer, the parent robins are exhausted from raising 2 or even 3 batches of babies. They simply do not have the extra biological energy required to produce a brand new set of bright red, carotenoid-rich feathers right at that exact moment. So, they grow in a temporary set of dull, grayish feathers to save energy. Then, just before winter sets in or early the next spring, they molt one more time, eating all those winter berries, and finally grow in that flawless, glowing red breast again. And you really have to see that red breast in the winter to truly appreciate it. Picture a freezing January morning. The ground is covered in a thick blanket of white snow. The trees are bare. Everything is gray, white, and brown. And then a robin lands on a snow-dusted branch. Against that stark, blinding white background, that rusty orange-red chest practically vibrates. It is one of the most striking visual contrasts in all of North American nature. But winter is also when that red breast is put to the ultimate test. The insects are gone, so the robin is forced to rely entirely on those carotenoid-rich berries we talked about. Flocks of robins will descend on a single hackberry or juniper bush, eating frantically to build up their fat reserves for the freezing night. The red breast in the winter is not just a mating signal anymore. It is a visual reminder of the bird's incredible resilience. It is a tiny, warm spark of life in a frozen world. Now, all this talk about males flashing their red chests brings up a very common question. What about the ladies? Do female robins have red breasts too? The answer is yes, but if you know what to look for, you will notice a subtle difference. The female's red is usually just a little bit softer, a little bit paler, and slightly less intense than the male's. For a long time, people thought this was just a minor detail. But remember that secret ultraviolet light show we talked about? The female's breast also reflects UV light differently. The males can actually see the subtle differences in the ultraviolet glow, which helps them identify females from a distance without having to fly right up to them. It is just another layer to this incredibly complex visual language happening right above our heads. Now let us take a quick step back and look at the big picture. You are probably picturing the American robin in your head right now, the one with the red breast, pulling worms on the lawn. But did you know that the name robin and the idea of the red breast actually comes from a massive historical mistake? When the early European settlers first arrived in America, they were incredibly homesick. They missed the familiar birds of their homeland. In Europe, there is a tiny, plump little bird called the European robin, and guess what? It also has a bright red breast. When the settlers saw the large, gray and red bird in America, they immediately thought of the little bird back home. They called it the American robin, even though the two birds are not closely related at all. The European robin is actually a type of chat, closely related to bluebirds, while the American robin is a true thrush, more closely related to the bluebird and the mockingbird. They just happen to evolve red breasts completely independently of each other. Scientists call this convergent evolution. It is like nature coming up with the exact same brilliant idea twice. Both birds figured out that a red breast was a great way to communicate, even though they are on completely different branches of the family tree, and that is not even the best part. Because of this naming mix-up, we have spent centuries assuming the American robin and the European robin are cousins, when in reality, they are just strangers wearing the exact same color shirt. So the next time you walk out onto your back porch with your morning coffee and see a robin hopping across the wet grass, take a second to really look at it. That red breast is not just a pretty splash of color. It is a glowing ultraviolet billboard, a receipt of its diet, a badge of survival, and a living reminder of a historical mix-up that happened hundreds of years ago. It is a tiny, feathered masterpiece of evolution, right there in your own backyard. The next time you see a robin with a particularly bright, deep red chest, you will know exactly what it means. You are looking at a healthy, successful survivor who knows exactly how to thrive in the wild. It really makes you look at those everyday backyard birds in a completely different way, does it not? I would love to know what you think. Have you ever noticed the difference in the red color between different robins in your yard? Or maybe you have spotted those spotted, pale-breasted teenagers hanging around your feeders. Let me know your favorite robin observations down in the comments below. Thanks so much for spending your time exploring the wild world right outside your door, and I will see you in the next video.